why you think this interest is here now, the timing of it, the degree of it, why you think that's happening. And then second of all, how you think that this interest will impact the realm of psychedelic science moving forward. For example, what can we expect to see in 5 years' time as a result of this renewed interest in the field?
I think what we're seeing is that we're starting to have a critical mass of people interested in this and studying it. I think it's being studied at some of the mainstream places. Robin is one example here. And I think you need a critical mass to get to a certain point of interest. And I think that's where we're at. And what I also see is that, especially with the younger generation, is that people feel really stuck with the current treatments that we have. As Rakesh talked about, we've got some great treatments. However, a lot of people don't progress and a lot of people drop out. And so I think people are feeling stuck, they're feeling frustrated, and I think they're ready to explore something new. And so those are, I think, two important factors that have brought us to where we are right now.
How do you see this impacting the field of psychedelics moving forward?
I think we're going to have, a massive amount of data in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think it's really going to inform treatment and policy. That's where I see it's going.
I think I agree completely with Ruth that the sort of critical mass is a large aspect of it. I think there's probably been a couple publications. Certainly the work out of ICL, like Robin, has been highly reported in the popular press. I think that's one aspect. Also, Michael Pollan's work, I think, in his recent book, I think that was a large step in the right direction. But I think also, too, that couldn't have necessarily happened without the increase in the quality of the data that's been associated with it. There's been, hints, really strong hints and strong pieces of data out of, sort of a piecemeal of research over the last 50 years. And because the quality of the data has really caught up with it, I think it's becoming much harder to argue against. And that aspect, that balance is really what I see as shifting. And I think, if I move forward 5 years in my own mind, I think really what understanding this more precisely is going to do is allow a sequential enabling of different conditions that we can use to treat with psychedelics, primarily like we're talking about here, assisting psychotherapy, but as was mentioned, there's, applicability across a number of different body systems, and I see those as new frontiers in this area, things along the lines of the immune system, inflammation, et cetera, like Rakesh was mentioning.
Well, for a long time, it's been hard, in a sense, for this area to be taken seriously. So I've got to be honest, I'm very much enjoying the present mainstreaming of things, seeing papers get into prestigious journals and seeing, a lot of luminaries in academic psychiatry, like those that you have on the call here, becoming interested now is wonderful to see. It's kind of affirming in a way. I remember the days of speaking to people at conferences where they would kind of literally scoff, the triviality of studying how psychedelic drugs work in the brain. And so this is great, and of course it translates into more resources to do research, to ask more questions, and indeed build that critical mass of evidence. And it is so rich. I mean, there's a lot to all of this, to be processed, nuances in relationships, new ways of thinking about mental health itself, as well as interventions for mental health. So I do believe it's very healthy. And having recently done a trial where we've gone head to head with a conventional treatment for depression, that's helped contextualize for me quite how different psychedelic therapy is to a standard antidepressant medication, for example.
I could echo everything that everybody said. I think to change sort of a slightly different line, I think that for those of us that have been around long enough, we've sort of grown up in the SSRI, starting with Prozac kind of era, right? So So what happens is it's now been about 30 years. So it's time for change. And that's kind of the natural history, the cycle. We had antipsychotics, tricyclics before that. So I think that's one of the pieces. I also think in the perfect storm kind of sense, we're talking a lot about academia and the scientists. I think we've also given our patients a voice. Right? We've increased awareness of mental illness. It's come out of the shadows. So guess what? At a point, it's no longer stigmatizing. You can talk about it, but now it's beyond talk about it. They're actually now demanding. They're sort of saying what you're giving us isn't good enough. So I think those things are happening. I think in terms of the science, okay, we've sliced and diced and tried to do what we can with these SSRIs, NRIs. Let's look beyond. Let's look for something else biological. Our patients are sort of saying, guess what? Everything you've done for me doesn't quite make me as good. I mean, Ruth Boyd of feeling joy again. Antidepressants don't actually make people happy. They hopefully make them less depressed, right? So that's the piece. And the last thing I want to say is that let's not pat ourselves on the back too much, because you go back 100 years, 120 years, many years, people were using substances like this, and in fact doing medication-assisted psychotherapy with some success. Back with Freud and Genet and Bastian's with LSD, post with the Holocaust survivors in Leiden University. So we are sort of, it's a renaissance, but it really, like most, you're sort of rediscovering something that people knew. And from a psychological perspective, of course, you have inhibition, you have things that block you from accessing things. And sometimes the therapist sits there and says, geez, if only I could remove that thick blanket you have and get at the real meat. And I think people knew that years and years ago. So I think we're at this juncture in history where the science kind of meets our patients where they are. And so we've maybe become a bit more liberal in the sense that we're sort of being open-minded in terms of researching things. So I think we've just hit that point with academia, with culture, and certainly I think the giving our patients a voice has played a big role in this.